Oh, yes, I just got this. Yes, I just got this.
All right, apologize for the delay. I'm not getting back at 9:45. Please mute your phones out there. We are going to come back into the board meeting with public comment. This time is for information from the public on matters not appearing on this agenda or within the consent calendar. All comments are limited to 3 minutes and must pertain to matters within the jurisdiction of this board. When addressing the board, please state your name for the record and address the board as a whole through the chair. No action or discussion will be conducted on matters not listed on the agenda. However, the chair may refer the subject matter to the appropriate department for follow-up or schedule the matter on a subsequent board agenda.
Supervisor Brown, would you like me to report out for closed session at the conclusion of the meeting?
Of the one we just had?
Or if we have another closed session at the end of the meeting, I can report out for all three after that if you prefer.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I don't know if you guys are here to make public comment or not, but as far as the Lewiston item, as you can see from the information there, the item will be pulled due to new information that's been received. So the hearing will not be happening. And that memo there should be pretty self-explanatory as to why.
May I speak to that, please?
Yeah, of course.
I'm counsel for the Prince of Lewiston, the appellant, and I am curious as to what the intended impact of that is. So does this mean that the present operator has no license to operate and will be expected to cease operation and, for the terms of Southside Family Farms permit, remove the equipment and facilities that are present from the site?
I'm not able to speak on the specifics, but if you look at the memorandum that was turned in subsequent to the board agenda, I believe the last sentence is quote unquote, I have withdrawn my approval of CCL number 435 ... The appeal is moot. So that should answer all the questions that are pertinent for now. As far as the details about that, I'm not in a position to state that, but I just didn't want you guys to waste your time by waiting till the end. Yes.
Just, I don't know if it's a typo, but the last number is not matching the CCL number. We just want to make sure that
It's probably just a typo.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I just wanted to confirm.
Okay. All right, so with that, we will open up for public comment. Go ahead, John Brower.
Good morning, Supervisors. John Brower from Junction City, and speaking to the last meeting item where Supervisor Frazier was encouraging the board to adopt owner-build, low-density rural housing building code that's available through the state now. The state has adopted and made it an option. Many counties around us have adopted it successfully. It seems very appropriate definitely for parts of Trinity County. It does seem to be threatening to the North Lake area, and so I want to encourage this board to please adopt this alternative building code that is designed for rural areas of California with low housing density as soon as possible. It's very, very good fit for southern part of the county and downriver, and especially where we've had these catastrophic fires. So perhaps to make it less threatening to the parts of the county that want to retain a more of a country club type atmosphere, there could be opt-out zones. Opt-out zones have worked well for cannabis. Or perhaps there could be a pilot program that would focus on the areas of these fire footprints, like the Helena fire and the August complex, which was the largest fire in California history last year. And try to offer these residents, especially in South County, some path forward. And as a safety matter for future large fire events, it would be great if this housing, especially in South County, was permitted, and the fire departments and police knew where houses were, and the county was benefiting from property taxes being paid on those properties, and people wouldn't have to hide their house from the county. I think participation in this program would definitely be a benefit to most of the county. So, thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Emma, is there anyone on the Zoom function with their hand raised for public comment?
Yes.
Yes, we have Adrian Keys.
All right, hey, thank you, good morning. Adrian Keys from Hayfork here. So I just want to go back to the last meeting also for a moment and ask just for clarity if the equity assessment piece was actually read. That meeting got so complex and so long that maybe I just missed it, maybe it just kind of fell off the table, but I would encourage, if it hasn't been read, to please do put that on a future agenda and accept the money so we can begin the equity assessment process. I know the staff probably isn't really feeling like having to come up with yet another ordinance, but the assessment process itself generally takes 6 months to a year for the interviews to be conducted, information to be gathered, and ultimately a conclusion to be made. And so it would be great to be able to get that ball rolling. That equity assessment money could go a long ways in Trinity County to addressing some of the legacy environmental issues that many of our neighborhoods suffer from, as far as poorly installed culverts and poor road geometry and a lot of those things that ultimately are a requirement of the cannabis program, and this money is intended to directly address those issues. Along with it could be used in many ways depending on how the county drafts an ordinance, but it does have a tremendous value and a long-term value for the county, and receiving the money now so we can get that assessment rolling would be great. So maybe next year we could get into an actual ordinance. And I would also like to support the owner-built low-density rural dwelling ordinance, and I think that the idea of a pilot project in the South County is a really efficient way to start looking at this. Just shortly ago, Siskiyou County adopted Class K as a pilot project to help out some of their folks that suffered really badly in the fires last year. It wasn't the August complex, I can't remember the name of it. It was Slatter Fire or something, I think, up by Happy Camp. But there's language there that could be borrowed. It's been approved in Siskiyou County specifically for rebuilding after their fire. So I do hope when the time comes and we have the capacity that we can get a pilot project rolling for the folks in South County. And honestly, I hadn't considered Junction City previously, but that's probably a good place also. And that's it for me today. Thank you very much.
Adrian, I believe that the equity grant money had been awarded at least 2 weeks ago, maybe even the meeting before that. That is my recollection. Yes, correct. So I believe the HSU group or whatever has begun that process. Emma, anybody else on the Zoom function?
Yes, Jeff Godella.
Hi, Jeff Godella, Xenia. Class K building just makes perfect sense in South County, not just because of the fire and not just because the price of lumber is skyrocketing and making it prohibitive to actually rebuilding, but it just kind of always made sense in these extra rural areas people are not going to rebuild in Ruth and Ketton Palm and Head and Shaw and Xenia. The forest is toast. It's not as beautiful as it used to be. I think the county needs to do everything they can to promote the rebuilding of these areas for so many reasons. The tax base, letting people enjoy the South County, the lake. It just makes perfect sense down here, and I would appreciate if you guys looked into it to allow it. I know Commissioner Frazier's been pushing for this for a while, and it makes so much sense. It's unbelievable that it hasn't gotten before the board yet. These are not hippie shacks. These are not teepees we're talking about. They're just relaxed building codes that make practical sense. And all building codes don't make practical sense, especially out in these very rural areas. You know, people can cut their own lumber. People can build in a way that maybe doesn't need quite the engineering, but still be safe. And just please let this happen. It's well overdue, and it works in other counties around us. Secondly, I'd like to ask the board or just tell the board that I think Trinity County is not being represented well in the lawsuit with CAA. Derek Cole has not fought for this the way he should be. The way he interprets it is not the way CDFA interprets the regulations, and Trinity County should really seek counsel, or at least a second opinion from a counsel that is a little more up to speed with CDFA regulations and is willing to consult CDFA and use their help. Because every other county is dealing with the same thing, and none of them are having this problem. I think that's it. Thanks.
Thanks for your comments. Emma, anybody else on Zoom?
I have no one else on Zoom. Is there anyone else in the lobby with public comment?
Hi. This is on a unrelated topic, so forget I'm wearing the orange shirt. I noticed in perusing the memo that you all signed several years ago about a rules and governance for the board. I don't know if you know which, it's on your homepage for the Board of Supervisors, called the Resolution of the Board for the County of Trinity adopting amendments to the Trinity County Governance Manual. And when I was looking it over, it was only signed by 3 out of the 5 Board of Supervisors at the time. I'm just wondering if there is a plan to revisit, because I found it curious that not all 5 supervisors signed on to it.
Was that the 23rd vice chairman?
It was
the most recent one?
Yeah, it's the one that's on your webpage. There's a link to it on the Board of Supervisors.
I believe only 3 signed on because 3 only voted for it. Is that?
There were no's.
Yeah.
2 no's, and none absent, none abstained, none recused. So there were 2 no's against it, and I'm just curious why something that governs the board wouldn't be unanimous with the existing board.
I would suggest watching the video from that board meeting, and
Okay.
the discussion would be valuable.
Okay, I will go back and revisit that. Thank you.
Can I get your name for the record, please?
Oh, Nancy Anderson.
Thank you.
Public comment?
Yes.
I'm going to jump in front of you, that way I can be back up there to listen to you. Thanks. Good morning. So public comment came into me from Chris Losi, and he is the district ranger for the South Fork Management Unit. He wanted to be here to present himself, but had to leave by 9:30 in order to be in the South County on time, and so asked me to give this for him. He states, my reason for wanting to attend today's meeting was not to talk about fire recovery, although lots of great things are progressing. Rather, I wanted to discuss some work we're doing to clean up some illegal dump sites across the South Fork Management Unit. On Tuesday, May 25th, we are planning a district cleanup day that will work on cleaning up the 2 largest illegal dump sites on Forest Service land. These sites are next to the community of Trinity Pines. We expect about 50 people to assist with cleanup, at least 30 Forest Service and 20 community members, and some county employees as well. One of the residents of Trinity Pines has offered to cook Hmong food for the cleanup crew. Forest Service employees have been authorized to use their work time to participate in the cleanup. We also have a small cleanup budget. The cleanup fund will be used primarily to rent dumpsters that we will place on site and then dump the material at the dump. We are working closely with Trinity County Environmental Health to secure these dumpsters and ensure that we can dump the material at the Hayfork Transfer Station. Any assistance that the county can provide in the way of reduced dump fees would be greatly appreciated. For example, if community members use their pickup trucks to transfer material, we would ask that they not be charged. I will have more information on the specifics of this effort at the next Board of Supervisors meeting. I would like to request time for law enforcement or one of my representatives to speak about this on your Tuesday, May 18th meeting. Chris Lissy, District Ranger.
All right, next public comment.
Hello Supervisors, my name is Bill Burton. I used to work with you guys. Keith.
Hey, Bill.
Since I heard a lot about Class K and my planning commissioner worked really hard on it, Richard worked on it, and I think it's a very relevant, useful method to form into a fire-resistant building. I don't know how much can be included in the Class K on that, but masonry construction that is more fire-resistant for the next 100 years could also be included in the discussion of Class K. I just saved some houses in a fire down in Santa Cruz, and being in the fire, noticing that the fire, if it's not a crown fire, if it's a ground fire that's moving through, the masonry buildings and the masonry bottom stories was saving houses, and people could feel safe not leaving their homes if they had an escape place within their home, or lots of masonry, small structures or pump houses or places to actually hide in during a fire event. So all these things can be included into a better building that doesn't burn as much. You got to admit that our standard building with all the wood is just not going to be safe enough. So it's very relevant to advance this discussion of the Class K with decent masonry allowances. I can imagine straw bale with the stuccoing on the outside also is preventative. And let the Planning Commission move this forward, and our county will get some really high quality building in there, and we'll see through these fires also which ones last 50 years or beyond. So it's a good move for us to go into. Thanks a lot. Good to see you all.
Thanks for your comments. Is there any more public comment?
I have no other public comments on Zoom, and I'm not seeing any public comment from the lobby.
All right. With that, we will move into presentations, behavioral health services, item 2.1. Adopt a proclamation which recognizes May 2021 as Mental Health Awareness Month, no fiscal impact. Connie, are you on the Zoom?
I'm on Zoom. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Good morning.
Do you have the PowerPoint?
Yes, I'm pulling it up now.
Okay, thanks. I have just a short presentation for you this morning, accompanying our request for a proclamation recognizing May as Mental Health Awareness Month. It is recognized nationally as Mental Health Awareness Month, and it provides us with an opportunity to think about and acknowledge the importance of mental health and well-being, to think about the prejudices and misconceptions about mental illness, to think about stigma that prevents people from seeking treatment, and that mental wellness and recovery is possible. I'll go ahead and wait for the first slide. That's kind of the first slide, but I may be able to share my screen if that's helpful.
I've got it now. Thank you.
Great. We can go to the second slide, or the third slide, please. So 1 in 5 people will experience a mental illness in their lifetime. And everyone faces challenges in their lives that can impact their mental health. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic during the last year, the number of people experiencing a mental health crisis or other illness has increased dramatically. In November of 2020, the CDC reported that 44% of Americans were dealing with either depression or anxiety. So with that in mind, it's imperative to support and promote mental health care in every community in order to realize stability and recovery from mental illness. Serious mental illness is defined as a mental, behavioral, or emotional disorder resulting in serious functional impairment which substantially interferes with or limits one or more major life activities. And here we have some statistics. 1 in 5 adults in the United States experience mental illness every year. 1 in 20 adults in the United States experiences serious mental illness every year. 1 in 6 youth in the United States experience a mental disorder every year. 50% of all lifetime mental illness begins by age 14, and 75% of all lifetime mental illness begins by age 24. And then finally, suicide is the second leading cause of death by people aged 10 to 34 years. In closing, we are here to help. These are the contact numbers for mental health help in Trinity County. We have our main clinic number, a 24/7 crisis line number. We also have a toll-free number. And then finally, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline phone number available for it. So thank you for letting me bring mental health, and May is Mental Health Awareness Month to the board this morning.
Thank you, Connie. We appreciate your time and all that you do for the county. Thank you. Do we need a motion on the proclamation?
Yes.
All right. I would entertain a motion.
So moved. And I have a question. Is there public comment? Should be heard on the proclamation?
Yes, you can open up for public comment. You're taking action on it.
All right. Is there any public comment on this item?
We have a motion. We need a second, please.
Second.
Thank you.
Motion from Supervisor Groves, second from Supervisor Coggins. Is there any public comment? All right. Emily, please pull the board.
Motion by Supervisor Groves, second by Supervisor Cox. Supervisor Cox, how do you vote? Supervisor Groves.
Aye.
Supervisor Gogan.
Aye.
Supervisor Frazier.
Aye.
Supervisor Brown.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Next item, Trinity County Transportation Commission. Are we doing the addendum first or second after 2.2?
So the addendum is not properly agendized. It should be under the Transportation Commission, so that item needs to be re-agendized for a different meeting.
Okay, my apologies. All right, item 2.2, receive a presentation from Caltrans Project Manager Kelly Timmons on District 2's 2021 Trinity County construction look ahead.
Morning, Rick Tippett, Director of Transportation. Annually, we have Caltrans come in and give us an update of the projects that are going on state highway system, and then some that we are working cooperatively with on the state highway system. You're all probably familiar with the famous summer map of what the construction will be this summer, and Kelly brought in the map, and I'll turn it over to him and let him explain what's going on. But just real quick, Kelly Timmons is the Kurt Birkenpass.
Clint Birkenpass?
Yeah, Clint Birkenpass, and or Steve Rogers that we used to work with. He's now our representative for Trinity County and helps us coordinate projects on the state highway system.
I'd like to provide a larger map. I don't know if you've received those, plus my business card.
Kelly, give it to Emma.
There you go. All right. Great, thank you. I just do want to note that my office number on my business card is no longer in use. Since we've started teleworking, we've tried to cut down on our office equipment, but my cell phone still works. They haven't cut that off yet. I'd like to just start out by introducing myself, and I'm very happy to be the project manager for Trinity County, representing Caltrans. I started traveling across Trinity County when I was 3 years old, when a couple of my uncles moved to Eureka, and I was living with my family in Reading still, and I made that trip probably 2 or 3 times a year growing up, at least, and this was back in 1973 when I started making that trip across 299. The time I was in college, I spent 2 summers working for a construction company down in southern Trinity County. I spent 2 summers working on realigning the grade from South Fork Mountain down to Mad River. And more recently, I had the opportunity to move back over to Shasta County from Eureka. I spent quite a few years working at Caltrans in Eureka, and I still work in Eureka, so I was making that commute 2 or 3 times a month. During the time that we had the Big French Creek slide, road closures, as well as the Junction City fire, and so I'm very aware of the conditions of the highway here in Trinity County, and the pains and the sufferings that the community citizens experience, and because I've been part of that pretty much my whole life, traveling back and forth and building roads and being just a community citizen using the roads. I'd like to go through, just starting with the, if you turn the maps over to the second page, the back page, is a list of the projects. In the orange, light orange is the construction that's happening this year, currently, through this next season. The aqua blue are projects that are in either the environmental or design phase before it goes out to construction, and then the purple are projects that are still being programmed, and they haven't yet started work on them. And so most of these projects that are in construction right now are culvert jobs and or worker safety projects, and then also there's some environmental or non emergency jobs. being that this is the first time I've presented, I don't know if you wanted me to go through each one of them, or if you have just questions about the ones that are being built right now. I do want to point out that there are some STIP projects that are coming up that are in the design phase or in the programming phase. I'm working closely with Rick Tippett on combining STIP money with our shop projects. Those would be in the design process right now is the downriver turnouts that we'll be constructing in another year or so, providing turnout in both directions just west of Del Loma or east of Del Loma. And then in the programming, we do have a Burnt Ranch Cap-In is a shop project where we're trying to combine, we will be combining a left turn lane to School Road off of 299. And we're also looking at combining some local funds on Tangle Blue to improve an intersection.
All right, let's start this meeting. Good morning, welcome to the April 20th Board of Supervisors meeting for Trinity County.
Working together.
For Zoom users, please, the chat function is only
recently to provide inspection, Caltrans inspectors for electrical work on the Nance Gulch intersection here in town in Weaverville. So I guess, is there any questions on any of the particular projects that we have coming up in construction right now or in the future?
Supervisors? So the Swift Creek Bridge replacement, here on your project, you show that as a 4-year project. Is that?
Yes. Well, so the end date is January 2025. And so it probably would, we're expecting most of the work to be done by the finish of the season of 2024. There may be some cleanup work and finalizing some paperwork there at the very end, that would bring it out to January, but it's not going to go through the year of 2025.
So what construction will be done this year?
I'd have to talk to the construction engineer. I'm not sure exactly how much they'll be able to get done. It's starting in May, and so with that being, just starting this month, they'll get some of it done, but I don't imagine a lot of it's going to get done, with it compared to the whole project. Okay. Did you have any particular, like?
Well, the concerns is, I don't know how much traffic delay we're going to have in that, and so looking at 3 years of traffic delay would be a little worrisome to me. I know it's a big project and there's a lot of dirt material.
Right. Just to let people know, and I didn't clarify this earlier, is I just became the project manager this last year for Trinity County, and if you look at the project managers that are listed for the construction, a lot of them are other project managers, and that's because it was so close to starting construction, it was more efficient to keep them as the project managers, and I'll have to get back to you on that one. If you want me to, I could get a little bit more information on how much work is being done this year versus the other years, and what the traffic management plan is for that project in particular.
That would be wonderful if you could get back and just just a year by year what the plan is. Doesn't have to be terribly in depth, but I have a lot of people, constituents, who are going to be really concerned about that project.
No, that's fine. That's perfectly good. Do you want me to just work through Rick Tippett then?
Yes, please.
Okay.
That's good. No more questions.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you. If you do have any questions in the future, you can always give me a call, and I'd be happy to work with you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mr. Stewart. Now we will go into the consent calendar. These items include routine, non-controversial matters and will be acted upon the board by one roll call motion. If a member of the public has any questions or comments on an item on the consent calendar, they may provide them now. A member of the board or staff may request an item be pulled and considered separately. Are there any items wishing to be pulled by the board?
I have one item that I think needs to be fixed. Item 3.8 says we're approving the regular minutes of May 6th meeting, and it should say April and April 20th, not May.
Oh, nice. Alright. Anything else? I would like to pull 3.12. It's just out of curiosity. Is that okay, Rick? Will you be able to explain that one? All right, thanks. And with the typo on 3.8, does it actually need to be looked at separately, or is that typo just able to be addressed?
You can just correct that with the approval of the minutes as the calendar as amended as to the item.
Okay, so it's just item 3.12 then being pulled. Are there any members of the public wishing to pull an item? All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion on the consent calendar.
I'd move to accept the consent calendar with one amendment, and that's to item 3.8, changing the date from May 20th to April 20th.
Okay, and then you're fine with the, okay. Is there a second?
I will second that.
All right, we have a motion by Supervisor Groves, a second by Supervisor Frazier. Emma, please pull the board.
Supervisor Frazier, how do you vote?
Aye.
Supervisor Grove?
Aye.
Supervisor Cox? Supervisor Gogan?
Aye.
Supervisor Brown?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. So, Rick, can you tell us about item 3.12, please?
Okay. For many years, there's been the PG&E Rural 20A program, which allows for, or it's essentially they collect a fee or tax on utility bills for customers in the PG&E area, a rate-paying area, and allows for undergrounding of utilities, particularly with a focus in communities. And so we had been collecting, at one time we had a pot of over $1 million to do undergrounding projects. We had proposed a couple undergrounding projects many years ago, some even before my time. One was proposed down Van Duzen. Part of the problem is a lot of times you have to connect into houses that are not set up for that type of undergrounding. Those projects can end up running thousands of dollars for the homeowners. So none of the projects were very popular, I would say, and we did not have success in looking at communities to underground. So what we did was maybe about 10 years ago now, we approached Caltrans or PG&E about undergrounding some of the utilities across roadways. Like for instance, Rusenia, so when there was a snowstorm and the PG&E line dropped, it would, if it was underground and across the road, then it wouldn't drop onto the road and we wouldn't have the problems that we run into occasionally that we do now. And they turned us down on that proposal. So essentially what we did was we had $1 million in the bank, and a lot of the communities have also, a lot of other communities have had this problem. And so these communities that haven't been able to exchange their dollars had taken to selling their credits to counties or cities that do need the money for projects that they have ongoing. And we can usually get 50 cents on, well, a lot of them have been doing 25 cents on the dollar, but I insisted we go 50 cents on the dollar. And the first one we had sold to was Pinole. We had sold over half of our credits about 3 years back. and it goes into the general fund. Los Altos approached us the other day about selling the remainder. Now, in the interim, the CPUC has not been very thrilled about counties and cities selling their Rural 20 money. They would rather take it from one community and give it to the other. And so they are meeting on Friday to not allow this process anymore. So what we're doing is we're getting it in just in time to make sure that we can get that done. So with that, I can answer any questions.
No, that was super thorough for me at least. Any other questions from the board? All right, appreciate it, Rick, thank you. All right, now we will go into our slightly
Can I?
Oh, sorry about that.
Public comment too.
Is there any public comment on this item?
I have none on Zoom.
All right, we can entertain a motion.
So moved, and I will have a comment after.
Okay. Is there a second on the motion? I'll second the motion. We have a motion and a second. Supervisor Groves, you have a comment?
Yeah, I think in the spirit of previous South County supervisor always asked for, since it's South County and downriver where this money is supposed to go to through the PG&E, is that there be deference for that money that's even in the general fund to have extra look at to go to those areas where PG&E is.
All right, with those potholes fixed. All right, any additional comments or discussion? Emma, please poll the board.
Motion by Supervisor Groves, second by Supervisor Brown. Supervisor Brown, how do you vote?
Aye.
Supervisor Groves?
Aye.
Supervisor Cox? Aye. Supervisor Gogan?
Aye.
Supervisor Fraser?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, motion passes. Next, we'll go into grants. Item 4.1, conduct a public hearing to consider adopting a resolution authorizing an application for funding in the execution of a grant agreement and any amendments thereto from the 2020 Community Development Block Grant Cdbg CB2 and 3 Program Coronavirus Response Rounds 2 and 3. No impact to the general fund. Funds in the amount of $370,816 in COVID response may be awarded to the grants department. Imagine Susie is on. There you are.
Yes, good morning, Honorable Board and public. I'm here to speak to you once again about my favorite topic, CDBG funding. I came to you today for the third time on this particular topic. Late last week, the hospital, which if you recall from 2 weeks ago, I was here presenting a different resolution on the same funding. We were going to potentially fund a transportation vehicle for the hospital to use to transport eligible COVID patients or susceptible or vulnerable patients. And since that time, we have learned that the hospital had a little bit of a miscommunication and are therefore not wanting to move forward with that application. And having a conversation with the CAO, we determined the next best course of action was to potentially apply for some economic development business assistance funding in the form of grants, which is eligible through Cdbg CV. It's not eligible through any other Cdbg funding. So we are going to switch gears a little bit and commit that funding that was going to be used for a transportation vehicle for the hospital for a business assistance, direct financial assistance to for-profit businesses. The amount of the application is $95,000 as a piece of that $370,816. In addition, we are asking for permission to use $55,000 of our CDBG program income funding to attach to that business assistance program, making it $150,000 eligible for grants. And with your permission, we would like to submit all 3 of these applications on Friday and hopefully get contracts turned around rather quickly. State is looking into expediting CD funds to get them out to the community faster. So I will entertain any questions. I'm looking for input from the general public on these 3 potential proposals.
All right, thank you, Susie. Are there any questions from the board?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for the CEO to see if I further participate. Is this monies going to be allocated as like the last monies?
No, I believe, and Susie can correct me, I believe this will be on an application basis. It won't be on just divide the funding up and allocate it out to local businesses. So you can correct me if I'm wrong, Susie, but I believe it's on an application basis.
Yes, because the Cdbg CV funding has to meet a national objective of serving low to moderate income households. So not everybody will be eligible for the funding. So yes, there will be an application that will determine.
Just for clarification, since it's an application process and I don't know if my business qualifies or not, I will stay and not recuse myself from the site.
Any additional questions from the board?
Susie just helped me out because I missed one portion. You said that there were 3 different applications you're submitting. I got direct assistance of $95,000 and $55,000 in grants. What's the third part?
Well, the $55,000 from program income is going to be part of the economic development business assistance application. That's one in and of itself. Another one, and the biggest component of that money, is the emergency shelter housing. So we are going to be granting as a sub-recipient some funding to Human Response Network to replace their travel trailers that they're using for emergency shelters. And we're going to be purchasing tiny homes or single wide mobile homes to replace those travel trailers, which are not meant for long-term living. And then the third one is purchasing a COVID-hardened transportation vehicle for behavioral health to transport their clients and protect the driver from the patients with respect to, COVID and safety.
Got it. Thank you.
Any additional questions from the board? No? Emma, is there any public comment on Zoom on this item?
I'm not seeing any.
Okay. Unless there is any additional questions, could entertain a motion.
So this is actually a public hearing. Did you open that public hearing, or did I miss that?
I announced it.
Okay.
Yeah. Is there any comment out there, Emma? We're good.
No, we're good. Thank you.
All right. I entertain a motion.
I would move to adopt the resolution as stated.
I'll second that.
Emma, you got a motion from Supervisor Cox and a second.
Supervisor Gillian, how do you vote?
Yes.
Supervisor Cox?
Yes.
Supervisor Groves?
Aye.
Supervisor Frazier?
Aye.
Supervisor Brown?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, the resolution has been adopted. We will go into reports and announcements next. Item 5.1, reports from department heads. Are there any department heads wishing to report? Mr. Tippett, let's start with you.
Rick Tippett, Director of Transportation. I just wanted to report out that Mr. Timmons had mentioned the signal at Lance Gulch and 299 is coming along. The contractor, right now what we're trying to do is get the contractor and Caltrans to settle on a date, and it appears that they settled on the date of beginning in July to do a lot of the undergrounding. And I asked them to wait just a little bit until after the summer rush to stand the poles and turn on the signal. So it's a little bit later than I expected. I was hoping to have it in late spring, but it looks like it's going to be early summer to midsummer construction. I'll keep you informed as we go along, but I am still bringing the item next meeting to talk about the money end of it, to make sure that we have everything set to go completely all the way through construction and bring the project to an end. Speaking of projects that are coming to an end, the jail is on its final week of significant construction. Matter of fact, it's all down to hanging the blinds yesterday, which was what they were doing But everything out there is pretty much ready to go. What we have is we have a building show right now, and we have to get the state fire marshal to accept the improvements. And the first meeting is on May 13th, and they're going to schedule what the fire marshal will do after that, and it'll probably be for the last 2 weeks going through the dampeners and the fire systems and the alarms. And then once he says it's okay, then they turn the building over to the county, and we already have a garage full of stuff that's going to go in there, and in Pleasant Sac and Reading, we got a warehouse full of furniture that's supposed to go in there, mattresses and all kinds of stuff. So we'll be outfitting the jail first part of June, and then I'll turn it over to the sheriff, and he's going to start the training and get everything wrapped up so that we can get it up and operating. But beautiful building, and we're really almost done, almost there. So it's quite exciting. So with that, I can answer any questions.
Any questions? Go ahead.
I just have constituents who are pretty concerned about the Lance Gulch 299 project, and seeing that it looks like it's going to start happening when traffic is at its highest and liability is a concern. Is there no way that Caltrans would consider it an earlier date?
The problem is coordinating. There's both the contractor and Caltrans have many projects that are going on, and so it's trying to get them to coordinate to the exact date. And so one of the things that a lot of the work that they're doing is not work that's necessarily disruptive to the mainline traffic. About 80 to 90% of the work that goes on for a traffic signal, the people don't see it because it's behind the curb, putting in the conduits, pulling wires, setting up things. The only 3 disruptions that we'll have is when we go to grind the pavement. First one would be to set the loops. We have to cut loops in the road, and they just do one lane, then we go kind of around to get it done. And then the next one is standing the poles, and really they only have to close the traffic for just a little bit to put the pole up and bolt it in, and it's just in that particular direction. It's usually never more than 5 minutes. And then probably the biggest one will be, as I mentioned, grind the pavement, but they repave it and restripe it, and that's probably the biggest disruption. And I asked them to try to focus those disruption dates outside of the summer travel, the busiest part of the travel season. So.
Any additional questions?
Yes, I have 2. One is a follow-up on Supervisor Cox's question. So I'm a little confused. You said you're going to do those out of the traffic season. So will those be done in September or October?
I'm trying to get some of them done, the preliminary work, before we hit July 4th weekend. And then the rest of it would be after school starts, around the middle of August.
Okay. Then a follow-up on a totally different subject. On Blue Mountain East Side Road, the Forest Service has brushing crews that are doing looks like a 50-foot clearing on the county road. They're doing it on private property within the right-of-way, but they're not doing it on SPI property. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know anything about it. I do know that SPI is doing a lot of work, so they, in coordination with the road department, and Ronnie Hanover, our superintendent, is going to be doing some grading work on East Side Road to bring material in to rebuild the surface on the top ridge part of the road. But I'm not familiar with
I will say,
stuff that's going on.
Maybe you should ask about this, because they must have at least 500 piles in that right-of-way between and on the paved part, and I don't know how far they're going, but it's quite the project that's going on there on the roads.
Yeah, it might be timely, because one of the things that we were looking at earlier was working with solid waste to get a tub grinder in to grind up that material into compostable or stuff that, wood chips, for better words. And you can move them into, be used for mitigations, or, you know, even the private property owners that are interested in grabbing some might be made available to them. So
These look like burn piles, Rick. So.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, that's all I have.
I'll follow up on it.
Thank you.
Any additional questions from the board? No? All right, thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Are there any other department heads wishing to report out on Zoom?
I'm not seeing any movement.
All right. Item 2, report from County Administrative Officer.
The only thing I have to report is pleased to announce, I see he's in the audience. I didn't know he was going to be here, but Michael has been promoted to our, what do we call you, Chief Information and Social Media Officer?
Chief Information and Social Media Officer.
Yes, he's been promoted to that position. Met with him, excited to have him in that position, and look forward to some of the things that we're bringing forward to the board. He has some innovative ideas to help protect us from cyber attacks and to continue to move us into the technology future. So I just want to welcome Michael and say thank you for accepting the position.
Awesome. Congratulations, Mike. All right. Reports from Board of Supervisors. Supervisor Frazier, start with you.
All right. I attended a CGT CAP meeting, I believe last Wednesday. Not a lot to report about it. One of the issues we discussed was the 5 biggest concerns for the county. Most of them were, all 3 counties were the same 5 things, scrambled differently. In Trinity County, it was affordable housing, mental health, substance use disorders, income instability, and education and training were the things, the largest concern for community action. CAP board member training on Tuesday, June 8th that I'm going to try to attend. And then Trinity County Office of Education was awarded a $15,000 grant for the Mosaic system, and the Human Response Network was awarded $60,000 for shelter and for parent education and life skills employment searches to help people in that. And also there's LIHEAP funding available. If you know people who are in need of that, that would be energy assistance, including the WPO system, which is wood, propane, and oil. So that stuff is available through LIHEAP. That's all I have to report for now.
All right. Supervisor Gogan.
Same meeting as Dan. I was also at the PSA 2 meeting discussing the possibility of someone here in our county taking over that food program for the Weaverville area. And then myself, Jill, and Dr. Kuntz were at a NorCal EMS meeting that went fairly well, and hopefully we set a good example as a county for helping them out in their bid to get some extra money.
All right. I don't really have much to report out on the last 2 weeks. Supervisor Cox and I are exchanging our NACO and SCED committees with each other, and that is about it. Supervisor Cox.
I have several things. First off, the town hall is next Monday night, and our speaker will be our local district ranger, Tara Jones. She's got bullet points that you can check out either in the Trinity Journal or on the website. She's the lead on the August recovery, and so Chris Losey will be on the call as well so that he can answer specific questions So that's a great opportunity, and you're of course welcome to jump on that meeting if maybe you live in the South County and want to hear what they have to say. You're more than welcome, and the link is on the website or in the journal. Fire Safe Council is doing some great things all month long. So it's Wildfire Awareness Month, and so the Fire Safe Council is putting out media every day for wildfire preparedness, including Defensible Space, which is this week, Home Hardening, Week 2, Emergency Preparedness, Week 3, and Prescribed Burning Educational Materials on Week 4. BLM, CAL FIRE, the Del Norte unit of Humboldt CAL FIRE are also sharing really good media this month related to wildfire preparedness. So if you're not on social media but you have an email account, Amelia Flights is summarizing that material weekly and emailing them out. And so if you would like to be on her email list, you can find her email on the Trinity County Fire Safe Council website. Also really important, this is a great opportunity. The RCD and the Watershed Resource Training Center are providing free community chipping in Weaverville to residents this week. So you can just call Chris or Dylan to get scheduled for that. And there will be likely some extra money to continue into next week as well. And then the RCD is looking to hire crew members for the fuel reduction crew. And so you can stop in and pick up an application if you're interested in that. The crews will run into around December 15th. And then the last thing that I have is that I was on the RCRC meeting for Supervisor Brown this week as he could not attend. And one of the things that's really important there is that the Board of Forestry has updated their regulations, which have the potential for some really significant impact to rural counties. So the RCRC has put their comments into, we're in the 45-day comment period for those. And this closes, well, the comment period, technically the 45 days closes before the hearing date of June 22nd, but the word is that they will continue to receive those comments right up to the hearing date. And so if you would like to express your concerns in writing, now is the time to do that.
All right. And last but not least,
Thank you, Chair. It was a busy couple weeks for me. We had the CSAC conference, a 2-day conference, which I get a lot of the highlights, especially the stuff to rural areas. The concerns there is the fire, all the fire legislation going through, and big concern to the rural counties in CSAC. We did have a LAFCO meeting here that I attended, which was working on the sphere of influence for TPUD. We had a phone call with Senator McGuire's staff, which was very interesting on SB 12, which is the senator's version of trying to do some fire safe work in the state of California. Let's see, we had 5 from the county, is that right? Richard and Lisa from planning, and me and Ms. Cox and Rick Tippett were on there. We gave them a fairly negative viewpoint of SB 12. The defense in this, which is, I respect Senator McGuire's work on this, his defense of having this bill is that it's going to be better than all the draconian actions that the state may take. And so this slows that process down and puts in my view, a pretty big burden on the county, but at least we won't have burdensome rules right away. So we made our feelings very strongly about that this is designed for bigger counties and bigger subdivisions. Their smallest line is 1 house to basically what they want to do is they have 3 levels of rules that you'll have to go. And so the bottom line is 1 through 8 houses. And I pointed out to them that Trinity County hasn't had an 8-house subdivision in at least in my tenure in the county. So that's over 21 years that we haven't had that. And I believe the number is probably closer to 30 years. And so that even their smallest level is way bigger than what we deal with. So they're going to take that back and discuss it with the senator, and we'll see what happens there. Also, the news that came out of that and also came out of CSAC was that SB 55, which was the very draconian rule, basically would stop all development in Trinity County, is dead as of now, and so that's good news for the county. And then also we had an airport commission meeting for the first time in a long time, and so that's good that we're getting back on those. And of course the airports have been neglected for quite a while, and there's not much money there, but at least we're thinking about that. And also Supervisor Cox attended that. As many of you may know or don't know, she is a pilot, so I guess she flew missions over Nam. I'm not sure how that was, but so she has an interest in the airports and developing the airports into a much more viable asset for the county. So I want to thank Rick for at least get this going, and at some point we need to, in my view, focus on trying to find more monies to get these airports, like I said, big asset. And so that's, I did want to reiterate the CDF rules, which are going to be pretty strong and worrisome. That is in the 45-day comment period. And the one last thing is, during McGuire's discussion with his staff that wrote the SB 12, I asked what effect would this ruling have on K housing, and they didn't know what K housing was and had no understanding of what, if any, effect all these fire rules would have on that. So they were going to look into that. With that, I am done. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that. So next we can go into county matters. These items include non-routine or controversial matters and are listed alphabetically by department. A member of the board, staff, or public may request that an item be heard out of order. Are there any requests from the board? Seeing none, are there any requests from staff or public? Emma, anybody out there?
I don't see anybody.
All right, then we will go into human resources, item 6.1. Pursuant to Trinity County Code Section 2.60.41.
Chair, I think Director Hunter and David Colbeck are here to present an update from the department heads.
That's great. They'll be on the next item. So, where was I? Pursuant to Trinity County Code Section 2.60.410A, authorized hiring applicant number 00635 as a community health nurse 2 at range G227 step D in Health and Human Services Public Health Branch effective May 1st, 2021. Approximate cost and salary and benefits per month for a community health nurse 2 at A step is $8,228 and at D step is $9,379. Shelley, you zoomed in? All right.
Good morning. Shelley Nelson, HR Director. Health and Human Services, the Public Health Branch, they have been running a continuous recruitment since November of 2019. And we've been trying to, fill a vacancy of either a community health nurse or public health nurse. And to date, we've had only 3 applicants, 2 of which had withdrawn over the past year. And currently we have an applicant who has scored well among the interview panelists and actually has 8 years applicable experience as a registered nurse within the county. The applicant has lived in Trinity County for 27 years. dedicating 5 years as a director of risk management and quality assurance over a critical access hospital, skilled nursing facility, 2 rural health centers. Additional work experience includes working as a floor nurse and in clinics and as an RN patient care coordinator. Prior work experience has given this applicant the opportunity to work with childhood vaccination schedules, the California Immunization Registry Program, reporting of communicable diseases to the county, preventative medicine, and also they've been working with the COVID-19 vaccine clinics for Trinity County patients. And this experience well exceeds the minimum qualifications for this classification. It would be a very exciting and tremendous asset to the department and to the community. And we are asking that you approve above A step at D, effective May 1st.
All right, thank you, Shelley. Are there any questions from the board? Is there any public comment on this item, Emma?
Not seeing any, and it does not look like there's any movement in the lobby.
Okay, then I entertain a motion.
I will move to accept 6.1 as presented by staff.
All right. All right, I have a motion from Supervisor Groves and a second from Supervisor Cox. Please pull the board.
Supervisor Cox, how do you vote? Aye. Supervisor Groves?
Aye.
Supervisor Gogan?
Aye.
Supervisor Frazier?
Aye.
Supervisor Brown?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Shelley. Now going to planning and zoning, item 6.2. Receive an update on the commercial cannabis program from Director of Building and Planning, Kim Hunter. No fiscal impact. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Kim Hunter, Building and Planning Director. So a few things to report on this morning, and then I will hand it off to David to report on the framework of the transition plan specifically, and provide you with some further information on how that is proceeding and the content of that plan. First of all, we have 291 valid license extensions issued. More are coming in. These are renewals. These are for cultivation licenses in our commercial cannabis program. We have renewals that are coming up that were already, the licenses are just coming up for expiration. So we're addressing those renewals with extension letters, reviewing the files as they come up for renewal to their anniversary date. And then of course we're having a good number of renewals coming in based on the 30-day window of opportunities to submit for those license applications that had expired without renewals or renewal payments or both received. So that's coming along very nicely. We're making good progress in that area. The last day to submit a renewal for expired CCL issued on or after January 1st, 2019 is next Tuesday. That's May 11th. As far as staffing goes, and as we discussed in our last report, there's 3 components of the transition plan. The first is the framework, which David will report on in a few minutes. The second is outreach and education. And the third is of course, staffing resources, the ability to process applications and the environmental documents. So I'm focusing on my efforts on the staffing and the outreach and education. So the outreach and education I have been working, discussing concepts with a marketing firm to help us out. So we do a spectacular job when the transition plan rolls out and everybody knows exactly what's happening. Different tools and methods of reaching out, communicating with folks. I touched on that in my previous report, which would include YouTube videos, printed materials, and social media. So we're very excited about that. I will know more and have more substance to discuss next month. The meeting is May 4th, and that will be my next update, and I'll have more on the outreach and education component then. because it will be further developed and the concepts farther along. This week we do, regarding staffing, we do have interviews starting this week for vacant positions. A lot of our recruitments are staggered. The goal is to interview for 2 different positions, so different sets of interviews for 2 positions every week, which is very ambitious with our staffing situation at the office, but we need to get those positions filled that are vacant, especially with our administrative support staff and all positions in the cannabis division that are open, including filling a few of the allocations that you approved in March, I believe. And then as far as staffing or resources go, we're still working on finalizing the request for qualifications for consulting firms. That will be posted and that'll be finalized. It's almost done and posted next week. And we'll get those out to consulting firms and have it posted on our website and wherever possible to get word out to interested parties. Some issues that we've been hearing about quite a bit in our cannabis division, and the board may be hearing about as well. In fact, one was mentioned this morning, is a huge amount of trash. I believe Supervisor Frazier has been to areas in his district that are just the trash and the amounts of trash in the waterways and vacant lands it's a very bad situation. Christy Anderson, our environmental health director, is working on that. We've discussed it. A portion of that trash, and another concern is just waste management for cannabis material, and that's the plant material, not plastics and other debris from various sources related to our cannabis cultivation sites. I think the Trinity Pines has been recognized as just, there's a lot of issues and areas of concern up there, also with the Forest Service. So trash and then waste management for cannabis material. Also working with Christy on that. We'll be coming back to you hopefully with some solutions and ideas. Not hopefully, we will be in the future on waste management. And then the other big issue, which will only get worse this year due to our water situation, is we're already seeing water trucks used for cultivation sites. Water trucks are not allowed for cultivation unless there's an emergency situation. Emergency situation is maybe a pump goes out and needs to be replaced. So for a few days, water trucks are used, or a week while that pump's being replaced. This is not where you just don't have the water type of emergency. That's not considered emergency if your well has gone dry. So that language is people interpret it as in different ways. What is an emergency? I'll be seeking to clarify that through a policy, and we'll keep you updated on that, because this is an issue that's only going to get worse again, as I mentioned, throughout this year with our water situation. It's early May, and we're getting many reports of water trucks on roads and delivering water to sites. So with that, I think I've covered everything I am going over today. Do you have any questions for me?
So pertaining to the water, I heard today Siskiyou County is actually filing criminal charges on people that are selling water, and so that may be something that you can look into.
Thank you.
On their, they have the one subdivision that makes Trinity Pines look really small. I think they have 6,000 illegal homes there. Anyway, that was just announced today that they were doing that. Of the 290 that you talked about that are renewals, am I to assume all those have state licenses, or they wouldn't be renewal, or is that?
Correct.
That's correct.
We're in close contact with CDFA and checking all of these, and if a state license had not been issued or is close to being issued, is in process, very close, then no extension was granted.
Okay, thank you. And then what CEQA work, if any, is being done on those 290? Are we under the urgency ordinance where none has to be done until?
Yes, these are under the urgency ordinance.
And I can't read my writing for the fourth question, so I guess it wasn't that important. Thank you, Ms. Hunt.
All right, thank you, Dr.
Good morning, Chair, Supervisors. David Kolbeck, Senior Environmental Compliance Specialist for the Department of Transportation. Happy to be here in front of you earlier in the day than the last meeting I think I was presenting on April 6th. What I'd like to do here is simply to give a brief overview of where we are now since that last meeting and keep this matter fresh and keep it alive for any discussion you may wish to have or any questions you may have of me of the transition plan or where we are, where we want to be going. One brief update is that I've met with a number of consultants, cannabis consultants, since the last meeting, which have led to some very good conversations, useful conversations, not only in terms of being able to clarify the county's position as the framework is in development, but also to hear some of their issues, their concerns, and try to address those concerns within the transition plan itself. To give you a brief overview of where we are with the plan, in some ways this may be a little bit redundant to what I'd already presented to you back in April, but again, it's a chance for you to raise some questions earlier in the day rather than at, I believe, 6 p.m., something like that the last time. So very briefly, the plan is coming together in a memorandum format. It has chapters and sections. The overall gist, of course, is the ability for us to issue licenses under CEQA law and underneath the EIR that was passed back in December. That being said, also the new ordinance that was coming into effect January of this year. So sections included within that are, yes, some legal language in terms of CEQA guidelines, but also a section on resources and materials, an outlining of what still needs to be developed, both for outreach purposes, but also for county staff to be able to navigate these complicated issues. Those resources and materials include fact sheets or flow charts or templates. Templates will be a big consideration as we move forward. Going further, it's a CEQA streamlining strategy. How do we fit underneath the existing EIR, and how do we actually approve licenses as we move forward? The principal mechanism, again, to remind you, is the environmental checklist. It's Appendix C of the EIR itself. So I'm seeking to lay out in fairly detailed format exactly how to use that checklist. That again will fold into the public relations and social media effort that Director Hunter just mentioned, but the plan itself is looking to lay out how that checklist should and could be used by an individual applicant, by a cannabis consultant, and by the county staff themselves. Part and parcel to that is an addenda. So if you go through the checklist once for your existing operation, it's how can you go through that checklist again if you wish to change your operation, if you wish to expand, for example. Right now you have a certain designated area, you wish to modify everything, make it bigger, change the orientation, something that likely will trigger the need to go through a checklist a second time. So that will be yet again another section of the framework. Other considerations is this section, and that is how we as a county relate to other state agencies, such as Fish and Wildlife, where there is a secret component to much of what Fish and Wildlife does. How are they in their actions relating to the county and our CEQA compliance? There's a question of ministerial permits, how those interact with the program, and by that I mean timber conversions under CAL FIRE, less than 3 acre conversions, grading permits, septic, well permits, and building permits. All of those, and to some degree or another, are considered to be ministerial. How do those then relate to people who want to develop their land and meet CEQA requirements? There is a section on unusual circumstances, which may include issues that were not addressed in the EIR, of course, but for unusual circumstances, there's also a section on cumulative impacts. If you have a cumulative impact, how can you possibly address that? What is the mechanism to move forward? Another consideration is the order of application and checklist processing. How is it if somebody has had their application in the department for a period of time, it has not been approved? How are we going to handle those, either new applications or existing applications? That needs to be worked out in detail as well to make sure that the process is fair and equitable. I will speak to just briefly the idea of a timeline. So of course, it's been in public discussion, I believe in the last meeting on April 6th, the idea of SB 59, where state provisionals it's being negotiated, I suppose, in terms of a Senate bill, where provisional licensing under the state could possibly, if passed as written, be granted through 2028. This, of course, changes the timeline of this year, July of this year. And then, of course, which also has a sunset of, I believe, January of 2020. So as that Senate bill is in development, being passed or not being passed, excuse me, we have to be very conscious of how the timeline of our transition plan and our urgency ordinance matches state requirements for provisional licensing or annual licensing as that plays out. To highlight again that the urgency ordinance that allows for extensions of licenses is expiring in September of this year, so that requires us to move fairly quickly, very quickly I would say, in terms of the development of this three-pronged approach, the transition plan, the public relations or outreach efforts, as well as the staffing. That timeline of the urgency ordinance is pressing, because I wish to remind the supervisors that this transition plan, we're looking to adopt it by resolution, which must necessarily go to the Planning Commission first. So there are some meeting schedules and noticing schedules that we need to be very conscious of. So I understand that many consultants probably have something to say in terms of the timeline and trying to expedite this effort. I'm just trying to impress upon the supervisors that we're aware of that and looking to move as quickly as we can. So again, with my overall intent here of giving you a brief overview and some parts of what you've heard before, but I'm happy to engage in any discussion or answer any questions you may have regarding any of these elements in the plan itself. So thank you.
Any questions on this? I believe SB 59 has already been amended, not to the 2028. I'm trying to look up the date, but it has been shortened drastically, so. July of 22. Okay.
Thank you, Supervisor. I'm sorry to cut in. Yes, so I looked that up, and I know that it's being modified, and so I didn't need to misspeak. I was just told that perhaps this doesn't actually need to go to the Planning Commission, that the adoption of the transition plan could go directly to the supervisors without the Planning Commission approval.
We're still determining.
We were still determining that, I think, is something to say, to slightly walk back from that comment.
So I want to make it clear for the people of Trinity that when we have this September date, or whenever the September 1st, is that when the UO is up? Okay.
The 5th.
That magically there won't be 530 compliant, CEQA fully compliant. This is a date for basically this process to be ready to start going through. Is that a fair analysis?
That is a fair analysis. Yes, and if I could intercede for a moment, I did forget to mention, I know that many consultants are working on preparing their materials in terms of Appendix C early, as in right now. They're looking to work through their client's application process in preparation for when we are ready to accept those checklists, whether that's before September or really at the deadline of September 5th, when the urgency ordinance is set to expire. And I just wish to take this moment to encourage consultants to continue to do that, to align themselves with what they know is going to come into effect by the fall, I guess I would say at the latest.
So you feel you're still on target having that date to have your work completed by that September date?
I would say that, yeah, that is our main effort. I think I expressed it in the April 6th meeting that the framework itself is a fairly heavy lift in terms of writing it out and detailing it appropriately. I wish to have that put together as much as possible so that it's not an incomplete product when it actually hits the streets, say. The question of staffing as well as public relations, of course, that hinges on the development of this plan to some degree, but I know that we are working with that time frame of September very much in our minds.
And then I finally interpreted my note that I made for Kim. When you look at the applications, you're doing 2 jobs a week, you're trying to go through. Do you have a decent amount of applications that are being come through? I mean, are we getting some traction there?
Yes, it's been very successful. Yes, we have quite a few. I will get some numbers of how many have come in. Get those numbers together of what's come in. Are you interested in what's come in for the 30-day window that was expired, or the?
No, I was just curious what all of California and probably all the United States right now has a real job. People in every business can't find employees, so I was curious if you're getting a reasonable amount of applications or.
Oh, applications. Excuse me. Okay, for the positions.
Right.
No, not very many.
Okay.
It matters on the position, but I think, yeah, countywide, or especially with administrative positions, yes, having difficulty filling those positions and finding candidates.
What about the more technical positions?
Haven't got there yet with my interviews, but those have been a little better for us so far.
All right, thank you.
Kim, has there been any hiring at all?
No, our recruitments they were slow. We had to extend some because of the lack of candidates. So we're starting interviews this week.
All right. Thank you so much. Oh.
David, sorry, I have a quick question for you. Could you just clarify, because I heard Supervisor Grove's question and just a bit more clarity. So you're working through this amazing process, and I love it. Like it just seems like you've got so much thought into all of the nooks and crannies of where there could be a problem, and I just appreciate all of that. I think Supervisor Kurov's question was, okay, so we come up to late August or early September, and there isn't going to just magically be this thing. But I think that what I heard you say was you're going to be encouraging license holders to be taking some of these action steps while you're developing this, so that when we come to the end of the urgency ordinance, some of that's already in place, or did I misunderstand?
That's a fair summation of what I was trying to get to. So yes, I do encourage the consultants to move forward. I understand, to add more words to that, there's some risk involved. Say if you're an applicant and you wish to develop your checklist, your environmental checklist, you need to do some biological studies, for example. We don't have that template available for folks yet. We don't have the description of qualified professionals out there yet. So I understand that there is some gray area, I suppose, or it's a little bit of in a vacuum. But regardless, I encourage, if an applicant needs a biological study, that they pursue it now while we're in the floristic survey, meaning that botanical surveys are possible, while we're in the nesting bird season, where you can actually abide by the mitigations that are related to nesting birds. So that's what I'm trying to encourage folks to do it while it's in season. But again, I understand the risk where if you develop a report for us and then you're ready to submit it, that we're going to, well, I hope it's all in good shape. So I encourage them to do good work and in some ways anticipate what we wish. I feel like there's enough information that's an industry standard that consultants will be able to do that. So yes, I encourage folks to move forward with what they're doing. I did speak to one section that I'm looking to develop, which among other critical sections, I consider this to be very important, and that is the order of application and checklist processing. So understanding that when the urgency ordinance is set to expire, or if this framework is adopted before that, that we will have many applications or many environmental checklists that will be, supplied to us, reports, plans, a lot of documentation, which I tried to speak to in my presentation on April 6th about just the volume of material. So understanding how the county will approach processing that material based off of when it was submitted, and there's a number of different approaches you could take there in terms of making it fair and equitable, but that is also a component of the plan itself. So if we have a lot of documentation from a lot of applicants to work through, we need to be able to be very strategic about how we stage our approach in terms of processing. I hope, is that more clear?
It is, thank
Yes.
you.
Any other questions? All right.
Any public comment?
You know, the member of the public, if you've not seen it.
All right. Go ahead, Mr. Bird.
Oh, okay. I wanted to talk about beneficial use of water that is part of the planning process, and going forward with the urgency ordinance, I'm sure you want to know about that. This county has permission to use beneficial use of water from the dam on down and all the way down to Humboldt County. We've got 50,000 acre feet that we share, that we need to demonstrate we share with uses downriver. You think about the logging days and all the roads out there that the water trucks were used all the time, to water down the road to keep it from dusting and all that. And I also think of the Caltrans jobs that took the water a lot for building the highways. That shows beneficial use of the water that our county needs. And if we ever need to show that we have usages of this water that are very commercially needed, we need to allow that use to go forward. And that's what the intent was, to allow this county to use up to 50,000, or to share up to 50,000 acre feet downriver from the dam. And if we do have those benefits, we will ultimately be able to demonstrate that it's of value to us, and if other places take the water over the mountain and other places, they will have to demonstrate that they're willing to pay for it. If we ever want to get paid for all this water we're losing, we need to demonstrate that we need it. So I think it's very appropriate to allow what's not a lot of water use, but allow an industry of, let's say, some environmentally cool trucks that can help us in firefighting, can help us with road construction, can help us with our commercial needs. And it's all staying within our basin, so the water is used in this Trinity Basin and not going out of basin, which becomes a whole other can of worms. But for them to take the water out of basin, it's expensive to us, and we need to demonstrate that. We need to allow this usage. I think Jeremy's thought about water usage downriver also, and I know Keith needs water for everything that goes on up that area too. It's very appropriate to have that industry used in a decent way. And I think we should slack off and allow the emergency use of the water trucks, especially if a well is dry. That means somebody is compromised completely. They're residential or whatever the needs, and you can't even fight fire if you don't have the water. So I just wanted to add that into the analysis of as we're planning going ahead. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Emma, are there any additional public comments?
Yes, on our right.
Thank you, I'm on Zoom. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you so much. I just want to say thank you to David Colback and Director Hunter for their presentation, for the update on how many extensions we have issued, as well as where the transition plan stands. I was one of those consultants that chatted with David, and there's a lot of good things, I think, coming from this transition plan. One thing, though, the board, I believe, should consider at this point, now that we're in early May, and the state of that is where it's at, the government code that the urgency ordinance was based on is based on Government Code Section 25123. It allows for a total of a 1-year period for this urgency ordinance. At this point, as you all know, it expires in early September, which is right before harvest for everyone in the community. So one thing to consider, not really knowing whether a transition plan will be into effect or not by that deadline, is for the board to think about agendizing an extension to this urgency ordinance and utilizing what this government code gives in regards to timelines to the full amount, which would be 1 year. That extension would take it from September to December and give what I believe is much needed time to the planning department to do a good job this first time around, so we don't have to go back and fix things. Do a thorough job, make sure every single part of the FEIR is being considered, as well as all the other considerations that David just talked about. But to make sure this is a tight plan at the first initial implementation of it, as well as, of course, waiting to make sure staffing is going to be a part of it. I know that's a big question I just heard about as well. As an employer in Trinity County, I understand the difficulties in finding people to fit these positions that need the appropriate environmental backgrounds, educations, and so forth. So I appreciate, again, what everyone's doing. I know myself in the planning department probably twice a week at this point. Progress is being made slowly but surely, and so I do thank all the staff that are still there for that. Then I also want to then thank you supervisors for understanding that we do have an opportunity to extend this urgency ordinance to that year mark, and I believe this is a really important time to consider that, to be able to give the departments the max amount of time they need, again, to have a solid plan that will fit with the FEIR and that will be right the first time. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your comments. Emma, anybody else on Zoom?
I have no one else on Zoom.
Anybody else here wishing to make public comments? All right. I don't believe we need a motion on this, so thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Next, we will go into Trinity County Board of Equalization. Item 6.4, continued deliberations of assessment appeal number 2019-01 from Diane Richards and Diane DePool for APN number 017-330-0900. No fiscal impact. And the contact is Richard.
At this point, the board has the choice. If we want to continue to deliberate, we can actually go into closed session and continue to deliberate and come out with the decision, or the board can just announce the decision. As I know we had a presentation last time. Shannon's not in the area. She's by phone if we have any questions. But at this point, it's the board's pleasure how you'd like to proceed.
All right, well, unless there's any objections, I would like to proceed into closed session.
My understanding of where we were after the last meeting is that we would be presented a letter by county council that we would then look over. Is that where we were at?
Yeah, we were supposed to have some findings and that we could look over and vote on.
I think my understanding was a letter, and we get to them within 2 weeks, and we're going to be looking over prior to that.
There are some findings that are drafted, but they haven't been, I don't believe, forwarded to you, obviously. Check with
My understanding is that we just wanted to make sure that she captured what our thoughts were.
Yeah.
Before we issued it out, so that's,
It's
I
hard.
don't need to deliberate anymore until I see that letter personally. But
Yeah, I don't either.
Okay, let's see if I can.
But I think Keith, or the whole board, was it 2 weeks when we get her letter done, so we look it over?
when she said that, I thought it was going to be this meeting.
Okay.
I can't remember a time date, but in my head, that's what it was. I don't know exactly. Just because it's in my head doesn't mean it was true.
So we'll still wait for that and go from there?
I'm just checking with her right now if I can
Okay.
present those to you. Make sure that they're finalized and we'll present you something that's incorrect.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and just adjourn the meeting until 12 o'clock. And while we figure that one out, and then we will be coming back in to closed session also, so, does anyone mind if I go ahead and do that? All right, we will resume at 12 o'clock, thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
I don't question anytime she tells me these things, because every time I've called her on it, she pulls up some magical thing that I go,
I went like, well, I thought, but I still wanted to.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I don't recall.